Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive HR Live. We are here today with Lotus Buckner. Our live today is with Lotus Buckner, and we're talking about the joy of HR. Lotus is a visionary HR author behind The Joy of HR, an experienced senior HR executive, and the founder and CEO of Talent Remix. How are you today, Lotus?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, good. It seems like we have a little bit of freezing going on right now, so I'm not really sure. I mean, you can hear me, but I'm seeming to be a little bit frozen, so I'll hope that all works itself out. But audience, you know the drill. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're joining from. I want to let you guys know that Lotus has been recognized for exceptional people-centric leadership by the esteemed institutes like Crane Chicago Business. And again, we're talking about the joy of HR today. So Lotus, let's just get right into it. And your first question, what prompted the joy of HR?
Oh my goodness, so many things. But I'm going to break it down to two things that really motivated me. Every HR professional in my world was burned out. They were looking to leave their companies, go off on their own, or completely leave the profession and make a total career shift. And I too experienced that burnout, but I was able to reinvigorate my joy for the profession. And I really wanted to support anyone who wanted to do the same thing to be able to do so. And so that was a big motivator. So, kind of happened since COVID that I was hearing this within my network. But then the bulk of the content, so the second piece of it is, part of how I reinvigorated that joy for the profession is focusing on the things that really made an impact. And that's where the bulk of the content comes in. It's about how do we align people strategy and business strategy. I wanted to help HR leaders and executive teams alike focus on the things that make the biggest impact and give them the biggest value within their companies. So many people believe that if we prioritize people, we have to give up profits. Well, the book and the real examples in the book from myself and some other top HR leaders really prove that those two things really actually can coexist, contrary to popular belief. So I talk about kind of 5 tenets on how we can really accomplish that in the book. So that's kind of the gist.
Thanks, Lotus. And I think I worked out the tech problems now. So do you see me? Am I streaming correctly now?
Yeah, so you were not frozen for me, but it sounds like it might have been on your end.
Okay. Well, that's the internet. So fabulous. We have a few of our audience members that I'm going to introduce right now. And Megan Bickle says, so excited for this conversation. And she's joining from sunny NYC. Hi, Megan. And Marnie says, hello, everyone, tuning in from Denton, Texas. Hi, Marnie. And then we have Christopher, who is joining us from St. Petersburg, Florida. Hi, Christopher. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for the conversation over the joy of HR. I am here with Lotus Buckner, and she is the visionary HR author behind The Joy of HR, an experienced senior HR executive and founder and CEO of Talent Remix. And Lotus has been recognized for exceptional people-centric leadership by esteemed institutions like Crane Chicago Business. And if you're just joining us now, go ahead and add who you are and where you're streaming from in the comments, and we'll take our second question for Lotus. Also, if you have any questions for Lotus, please go ahead and add those to the comments, and we'll go ahead and answer your questions in the flow of our conversation. So we just talked about what prompted the joy of HR. So I want to say, what prompted you to have other HR professionals follow along with your book writing journey?
That's a great question. It wasn't really originally the plan, but when I first announced that I was writing a book, I got a flurry of messages from HR professionals who have also been thinking about writing a book. And almost 100% of them told me a story of how they were discouraged from doing so, often even by other HR authors. So that made me kind of sad. They were all experiencing a bit of fear and imposter syndrome. Many of them actually told me that they had already written their entire books, but it's just been sitting on a shelf or on their computers waiting to be published, and they couldn't bring themselves to move on to that next step. So that's what really inspired me to share this journey publicly. I'm not special for writing a book. I don't mean to downplay that. It was a wild and hard journey, as you know, if you followed along with me, but I don't feel like I'm special for doing it. And I really believe that everyone can and should write a book if they so choose to. So who is anyone to tell them otherwise? I wanted to share the good, the bad, and the ugly so that future HR authors can learn from my mistakes and have an even smoother journey than me. And then I also bring in top HR leaders in the book itself, so they share their stories. And I really want, if it was just me telling my story and saying, hey, people in business can coexist, I feel like that would be one thing. And yes, I have great stories to tell about that, but I wanted to show that it's not just me, it's not just a one-off. There's a lot of HR professionals who have been able to make this happen. And I wanted to share their stories on how they do it, because there's no one size that fits all. So I think it's really cool to be able to see how different HR leaders have aligned people strategy with business strategy.
No, I completely agree with that. That we should lean on each other for support. We should help each other, and we should learn from each other's journey. So, thank you for taking us along on your journey, Lotus. I appreciate it. I've always considered writing a book, but just really haven't had the time. Also, haven't wanted to deal with, like Amazon, the problems.
I don't blame you. If you saw my journey, that is like the biggest part of recovery.
For those that are watching right now, can you, that may have not followed along with your journey, can you explain what happened?
Yeah, so I think everyone has different challenges. So when I started this journey, a lot of people actually, I think like the biggest bulk of people that I talked to told me that writing was the hardest part for them, like with writer's block and just getting motivated to finish the book. For me, it wasn't. So everyone's journey will be different. For me, writing, it wasn't easy, but it was very much in my comfort zone. I love writing. It was everything after that that was so hard, like going into publishing, the marketing, the self-promotion was really challenging. So when the launch came, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it was all kind of related to Amazon. So it depends where you publish through. And so we were looking to publish our ebook directly through Amazon. That was what we were going to launch with, because it's more accessible to people with the ebook if they just wanted to support me. And your first day sales kind of matter a lot if you're trying to hit any kind of bestseller or anything like that. Well, they didn't publish in time, and we were just down to the wire, having issues, waiting till the last minute. And the night before, I had to call it quits and say we're delaying the launch. And then it was just a spiral from there. Then we decided to delay the ebook launch, but the paperback was out there. So we said, even though it wasn't the plan, we were like, well, at least we can launch with that. So we launched with the paperback. Kind of gave up on bestseller because we didn't have the ebook. But on the first day of launch, my publisher, I remember getting a text from her like, tell everyone to buy the paperback. And I was like, what do you mean? That's not how we do it. That wasn't the plan. And she's like, I know it wasn't the plan, and I didn't know if we could do it without the ebook, but you just hit number 2. So let's just try and hit number 1. So we did. And this amazing community came through for me. And we hit number 1 bestseller in 5 different categories. So community has been everything throughout this process of writing a book. I honestly could not have done it without my community. They lifted me up when I needed it in the toughest of times, and really came through with all the challenges with Amazon at launch time. But finally, everything is mostly resolved. And you can get both the formats on Amazon now. So it's been quite a journey, but I'm very open about that because I want people to be able to take what's helpful from my journey as they go on theirs.
Yeah, well, number one, that's awesome, despite the trials and tribulations and the issues with Amazon. So we have one more introduction to do from our audience, and then 2 questions from the audience as well. So this is Joan. Joan, hi everyone, joining from St. Louis. Hi, Joan. Thank you for making it. And then our first question is from Marnie Robbins. How did the ethos of your book shift as you had conversations with these HR leaders, if it did?
That's a great question. I don't know if it necessarily took a dramatic shift. like I said, the motivation was just everything I was hearing within my network of HR professionals, including some of those who are in the book and share their story in the book. I think the best kind of shift or thing that I learned that adjusted how I was writing with involving these conversations with other HR leaders is a lot of the added advice that wasn't my own, right? So like learning from their stories also gave me motivation to add more value within those chapters. So sharing their stories, but then being able to add on my perspective about what I learned through their stories as well. And so that really helped kind of just make those conversations within the book more robust and also feel more authentic is my hope. And so that's been one of the most amazing pieces of feedback that I've received that I just, is everything that I could possibly ask for, because that was the goal with the book, is I wanted it to feel not like a textbook read. I didn't want it to be like this big scientific research-based thing. I wanted it to be real people, real stories. And so that's the feedback that I've received, that people really enjoyed about it. And it makes it a lot faster to read through it. So it's not just another book that sits on your shelf, hopefully. So I would say that's kind of the biggest shift. But it was all about it. It was all about kind of these relationships, the people dynamics, and how do we really align that with the business. And so a lot of the tips and the stories that were shared that really came out as the people-centric side. How do we really create that people-centric focus while still hitting profits, while still hitting revenue goals, while still being able to run a successful business that is very like business focused, right? There's a lot that it takes to operate a business, and none of that has to be given up. And that's what we hear a lot, right? Is that it's this give and take. And sometimes it can be a yes and, like both of those things can just coexist.
Yes. Oh, like improv, a yes and.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yeah, one of the principles of improv is that you get or you accept what the person is giving you, no matter what it is.
That concept makes it shows up in my book just for a minute.
Another audience question, and I like this question. It's from Megan. What was the most surprising to you about going through your own journey to refine your joy? Did you refine the joy, or was it always there?
What was that?
Did you refine your joy for HR, or was it always there?
I did. So when I went through burnout, I went through all those thoughts. I was like, did I make a mistake? Am I stuck in this career? Do I want to change careers? Do I want out? What in the world would I do besides HR? And I had all of those thoughts and just questioning if I went into the right field, because it's hard. It's one of those, I was just talking to someone about this. Our profession is such a huge umbrella of a profession, right? I mean, everything from compensation, benefits, payroll, internal communications, DEI, employee relations, compliance. Like I go on and on. It's just like, it feels like a list of 100 things that all just fall under HR. And so, especially since COVID, it's been nonstop as well, right? Everything since COVID has been these giant things that we had to take on top of our daily jobs. Between COVID itself, the pandemic hitting, and all the remote work stuff, and then social unrest, and then the mass layoffs. Those are huge things to be putting on top of our day-to-day. And yet we were all experiencing burnout at the same time. We were all experiencing well-being issues at the same time. And there's no HR for HR, right? My friend Julie Turdy talks about this all the time. Like, who's the HR for your HR team when they're the ones trying to take care of everybody else? So that caused a lot of the burnout. And for me, I did refine that joy. And the way that I reinvigorated that joy was remembering to focus on the things that add value. And so I really was able to refocus on the strategic work that I was doing, right? Getting back to what being able to compartmentalize all these distractions and noise that was happening that pulled me away from the things that made a difference on a day-to-day basis. And being able to reflect on that is really what helped me kind of push through that burnout and find joy in the work again.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about how I find joy in HR. And, you know, a, depends how you work your HR, right? So, going through the mundane, going through the burnout, for me, finding the joy in HR is thinking about the future of work, or the workplace possibilities that we are there to help mold and evangelize. And it's really looking at the future being a better workplace,
Yeah.
and for everyone. And got to add technology for me on there. And it's really this idea about tech and humans melding together to make the future of work and a better workplace. So that's where I find the joy in HR. Audience, where do you find the joy in your HR practice? Go ahead and add your thoughts to the comments. And we're going to ask Lotus another question, and then we'll circle back with you. You alluded, you pun there. You alluded to this before we got into the conversation about finding your joy in HR. But how can HR professionals build their business acumen and align their priorities better with business objectives? And you talk about this in the book as well, correct?
I do. It's actually chapter number 1, because I just think it's so important. But you have to first understand the business. And to do that, you have to get out of HR and go into the business. I personally did that by completely leaving the department and transferring to another department. But you don't have to make such a drastic move. There's plenty of ways you can do that. You can do a combination of other things like shadowing, volunteering for cross-functional projects, attending industry events. The list goes on. There's a huge list within the book to give you ideas as well. But, say for example, you might have dreams of building an elaborate training program, but the company might be losing money because of high turnover, which is being caused maybe by a lack of career paths or poor leadership. Well, implementing that training program, as amazing and incredible as it would be, won't solve those issues. And so we have to focus on solving real problems that impact the business. Why are we losing revenue? Hypothesis might be high turnover. Great, let's dig into that and see if it's true. What does the data show? How do those two things trend together historically? And if yes, why are we experiencing high turnover now, right? If our hypothesis is true, dig even deeper. I always say channel my inner 5-year-old daughter who just asks why all day long until she gets the answer she wants. Like, we should channel some of that and say why until we get to the root cause of the issue, because I think that's what's missing. We often either do this surface level analysis or we make these assumptions because we're humans and we have biases and we are so close to our work sometimes that we think we know what the problem is, right? When employee experience is low, we think we can kind of pinpoint that. And maybe some of us are really good at that if we've been doing this over and over again. But even if we're really good at that, we have to test our hypotheses. And so dig deeper and address those issues, solve for those issues, solve for real issues rather than just solving for what your assumptions are. Because I can't tell you how many times I've worked with CEOs and executive teams where we present some data and they sit in a room and explain that data to me for an hour, right? And it's like, okay, great. Those are all really great hypotheses. Now let's test them. But they want to solve for that already. And sometimes I've seen that where, they're very adamant about it and they go and we solve for that and it doesn't resolve the issue. And they sit there and they wonder why. And it's because we didn't dig deep enough.
And that's hard sometimes, is like to the point, is like you want to get the problem solved right away.
Right.
And
yeah.
A lot of times it's hard to go between waiting and getting it perfect or near perfect or just doing something. So
there's this bias for speed and urgency, which I actually think is great, but what I always remind leaders that I work with is, if you have a bias for speed, remember that if you don't solve this accurately and appropriately, you're actually wasting time. So your need for speed is not actually going to happen. It's just a total perception in your head that it will.
I love that. I love that. I think this is going to be one of our clips for our post live. um, so Christopher answered the question that I asked about where's your joy in HR, and the response is, like you, I find the joy in creating technology solutions that are human focused. Technology for technology's sake isn't helpful. You have to imagine the people using it and build to that. Absolutely agree. Thanks, Christopher.
I love that comment. 100% agree. And I think that that's a mistake that so many leaders make, right?
Yeah. All right. So I think might be this question that I have for you. And actually, it's not a question that I have for you. It's one that you had for yourself that you added. But I think the audience will laugh how I put this up here because I don't like to swear on camera. But what is give a SH leadership, and why does it matter?
We can use intentional leadership because I think that's the same thing. And I'll give you a quote here from the book. So I'll just pull from the book, and what is intentional leadership? Intentional leadership to me is leading on purpose and with purpose. It means exemplifying behaviors and making decisions that will create positive impacts for the people and initiatives that we have the privilege of leading. We don't live in a homogenous world, so there is no single best practice that will lead us to success. We must think about people's differences and how each company is also unique. One size does not fit all, and fair is not always equal. We need to customize our styles, approaches, and solutions to fit different needs. This seemingly impossible task is made more possible with intention. So that's directly from the book. But it's not easy to lead.
No.
So let me add to that, right? We sometimes make leadership out to be this glorious thing, but it can also be a very lonely and really, really hard place. We end up going through the motions, following best practice, or chasing after the shiny new toy. By shiny new toy, I mean the latest technology or the latest trends that are happening within the field. We do this when we haven't built a strong foundation. Best practice is not a bad thing, nor is new technology. They're both really great things. But leading with intention means we have to go beyond that. It means thinking differently and thinking about what has not been done yet, rather than just thinking about what has been done by others already that we can copy, or, because it doesn't work to just copy and paste. And this is also Chris's comment could not be more timely, because this is exactly what I mean by intentional leadership. When you're talking about technology, instead of chasing the shiny new toy or there's new technology every day in HR. And we just keep implementing these. We haven't solved the real problems. We're building technology around bad processes. And if we're not thoughtful and intentional about how we implement, and how we even before we implement, how we select the right technology for our companies, for our unique situation, is really, really critical.
And 2 points to what you just said that kind of really blew my mind. The first one was in August, we had Erica Nisi and Matt LaFata on from H Architect, and they're an implementation and advisory for human capital management tech. And they said that they keep an eye on over 800 technology startups, organizations, HCM, everything. And that's just a very small percentage. And then I think it was Megan that highlighted this post in LinkedIn, but it was from one of the ladies from Red Thread Research. And it was a map of the learning and development technology that was available and what niche they fell into. And I swear there was over 1,000 companies in that graphic. And I was like, and this is just learning and development. This isn't the whole gamut of HR technology. So yeah, that really blew my mind of like how many bright, shiny objects are out there, and how many more things every day we're going to bombarded with, and how many more announcements can OpenAI have per week. I mean, like their average is 3 right now. So
it's wild. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's cool. that there's so much technology and so many people trying to solve these different issues and automate these different issues and make them more efficient, but there's always two sides to that story.
And Marnie says, and we've had conversations about this a lot, is the greed recovering shiny penny chaser here?
I love that.
I'm still in shiny penny chaser anonymous. Honestly, I'm still that shiny penny chaser just because I'm so enamored with new things all the time.
I'm with you. But and I think you can be, right? I think it's just when you're the person in-house that's making those decisions to implement, though, you don't want to be wasting millions of dollars, right, on something just because it's the shiny new toy, right? I think it's actually great to chase those and like get to really know all these different technologies, because that plays a role in helping you make a better decision when you're a little more familiar with all the options that are available. Well, when it comes to decision time, I think we have to be really intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Christopher commented here, well said, every organization is unique, and what works for one company won't work for another. You have to be able to cut through the noise of the 100 or the 800 solutions and understand that unique aspects of how you work to get to a solution that will work for specifically your situation. So yes, definitely. Well said, Christopher. So we're on to our last pre-prepared question, but that doesn't mean that our conversation is going to stop, because we have a lot more to talk about. But I think that this is a great question, is what are the 3 skills that are critical to leading the modern workplace, in your opinion?
3 skills. There's so many.
Just 3. Well, you can only pick 3.
Okay, I'm going to go with top of mind, intentionality, which we talked a lot about, adaptability, and resilience. So if we can be more intentional and thoughtful about our decisions and actions, as we spent a lot of time talking about here, then I think that in itself can lead us to better results. We live in this fast-paced world, and yes, it's hard to keep up sometimes, but being intentional doesn't mean going slow. It means investing a moment up front to evaluate, think through things, and ensure that we're moving forward appropriately, so that we don't put in all this time and effort just to find out at the end that we made the wrong move, which is what I've seen a lot, right? These leaders who have this bias for speed, this need for, it's not even a bias, it's like this, they have this need for speed. I work with a lot of startup founders, and so there's this really strong need that's innate to them for speed, but sometimes that gets in the way of speed. So they don't realize that in the moment. But that lesson is really hard to learn then, because when they realize they've wasted quite a bit of time, there's a lot of regret there. And so I think intentionality is super important. I think adaptability as leaders is really critical. Just look at our lives since COVID, right? We live in an ever-changing world. Change is so constant. Many people say it's the only constant. We have to be able to stay nimble and adjust our approaches, our perspectives, and our decisions as appropriate. There's no one size fits all, and no single recipe for success that's going to work across the board. What's my third? Resilience.
Resilience. I was just going to say, it's resilience, which goes with adaptability, right?
Stuff happens, right? Unfortunate things happen. Burnout is real. We work with humans, and humans are imperfect. Our work can be complicated and even messy sometimes. So our ability to recover from tough things is incredibly helpful in leadership roles. That's my top 3.
Okay.
I hope I won't regret
it. I'm going to say, I'll choose different ones. So my top 3 are technology, acumen, or digital literacy, whichever one you decide to you like better than that. I would say self-care centric, because I really think that we help others better when we are able to help ourselves first.
Great one.
And then the last one, I just had it, and then it just kind of disappeared there. But it was when we were talking about resilience. And oh gosh, positive outlook. So I think that the ability to change any, to reprogram or to like rethink any negative situation into a positive. So what, like when one door closes, another one opens, that type of
Optimism.
positive outlook, or someone would call it realistic optimism. So
I like it. I like
audience,
it.
yeah. Audience, do you have a top three? Go ahead and add those to the comments. We had a quick comment from Christopher, and I wish I didn't have to leave, but I have to go to another meeting. Thank you so much, Lotus and Greenwood Mallet. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so audience, if you have a top three, go ahead and add those to the comments. We've got another 15 minutes left in our live. Also, if you have any questions for Lotus, now is our open Q&A time. And because there is a kind of a bit, like I was telling Lotus, there's like a 30-second lag between when we say things and when you comment. Lotus and I are just going to be chatting amongst ourselves right now while your comments and your questions come in. So Lotus, one of the things I ask every guest of Progressive HR Live is, what are some of your new favorite HR tech platforms right now, and why?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm a little biased, but my number one is going to be Change Engine. I'm biased because I'm on their advisory network, but it's the first of its kind all-in-one internal communication tool. So HR professionals are not marketing professionals, although I know you all can relate. If you're in HR, we are sometimes expected to just be everything to everyone. And it's not realistic. It just isn't realistic. Yet we rarely get the marketing support we need because they are rightfully focused on revenue generating initiatives. Enter Change Engine. This tool helps HR professionals automate, measure, and improve internal communications at every level of the company. So it's your obviously these communications are for employees, but as a user, you can use this as middle management. You can use this as senior level leadership. You can use it at the executive level. You can use it at the HR level. You can use it at the CEO level. And it uses AI to even, train on your voice so that its suggestions for you are more authentic to you. It makes communications more clear and beautiful as well. So it has like this Canva element to it. And that's part of their free tool. So if you even want to check out their free tool, they have an amazing library that is like the Canva that's specific to HR. So it's super cool. I think everyone should at least use that free part of the tool. And it's also revolutionizing the way communication impacts the employee experience. So they focus a lot on employee experience. They focus a lot on DEI. They focus a lot on celebrating people and celebrating differences. I haven't, and so that's like my number one if I had to pick. And then the other tool I'll say that I haven't been a user of yet, but I have seen a demo. And I got to meet the founder of Ashby, which seems like a really great recruiting tool. It's another all-in-one. Apparently, I like all-in-ones. And so it's an ATS, so it's an applicant tracking system, but it also does your analytics, your scheduling. It's also a CRM. So it really brings everything together that you would be doing in that recruiting space. So they seem like a really, really cool tool that is revolutionizing the way we do recruiting, because when you look at applicant tracking systems across the board, there's a lot of traditional options that are kind of monopolizing the market. And so I think Ashby's breaking through some of that noise with the way they're doing it differently.
Wow, thanks for that. And no, I've heard of Change Engine, but I've never heard of Ashby. So I'm going to go look them up and see what that's all about. So thanks for those recommendations.
Absolutely.
We had comments from Marnie with her three skills. She says charisma, balance of warmth, and competence. I really like that, Marnie. And then she says, "Oops, hit return. Echo, adaptability, and resilience." Thanks, Marnie.
I'm glad, Marnie. I wasn't sure. I was like picking the top of my brain for those.
So, Lotus, do you have any questions for our audience that you want to ask?
You asked this earlier, but I don't think I saw too many responses. I would love to know what, you know, what brings joy to people when they think about it doesn't have to be HR. Like if you're not in HR and you're on this call, like what brings joy to the work that you do? This is your realistic optimism. I really like there's just so much going on in the world that I think it's so easy to lose sight of our why. And that's what I always that's part of the motivation of the book is why did I get into this work in the first place, right? And the lovely Steve Brown wrote the foreword for my book, and he talks about this, and I bring up the fact that in Steve's books he really encourages people to think about why they went into this profession. And I just think that's a really great question, because that's something that's easy to lose sight of, just because HR work is constantly like changing every day. Our days never look the same, right? It's a lot of emergencies that we're putting out on top of doing the strategic work, on top of doing a lot of transactional work. There's just so many elements to that make it very easy to lose sight of our why.
Yeah. And we're authors too. And we're content creators.
Yeah. And marketing professionals, apparently.
Yeah, and
sometimes we're just expected to be right?
So Megan has a question. Now that you've gotten one book launched, will you write another one? That's a fantastic question, Megan. Thank you.
That is the famous question everyone keeps asking me, and I have no idea is my answer. Not anytime soon, at least. So I won't say no, but not anytime soon. I need a break after all of that launch chaos. So I need to take some time off from being an author. And we'll see what's next. I keep telling everyone I was supposed to take September. So we launched in August. I thought I would take September off and then figure out what's next. But September ended up being a big speaking month. So I'm taking October and blocked it off already and already planned some trips. So I'm actually going to take a break in October. And then end of the year, November, December, I think I'll focus on figuring out some of those what's next pieces, and hopefully we'll update you all by the new year. But I also will never I'm not the person who's going to give you this beautiful solid plan that I have for myself, because every time I've done that in my life, it just never goes as planned. So I've learned my lesson. There won't be some beautiful solid plan, but I will be putting some pen to paper and thinking about some ideas and thoughts about what's next and going after those in the new year.
You're still touring, right? You're still
my goodness. I just finished. So pause for now, but definitely open to continuing some events. One of my big dreams when I did this was to do an event in Chicago, because that's I have a really big community there, and one of my friends has offered a space, so we'll see. There might be a Chicago event down the road, but I like summers in Chicago and winter's coming, so we'll see when that ends up happening.
You could almost blow away in the winter. It is just so windy coming off the wind.
It's tough these winters.
So before we end, I'm going to do some kind of summarizing and some, I don't know what they call it, the end of something when you're talking about what's going to happen next. Housekeeping, ending housekeeping. And then maybe Lotus will read one of the stories from her book, because I didn't originally ask her to do this, but I'm really curious, what is one of the stories, or maybe a teaser of one of the stories before we end.
Well, you do your summary and I'll find something to read.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, audience. So our October guest is iSpring Solutions. They're sponsoring strategies, e-learning strategies for 2025, a conversation with Ben Mayhew, who is the Learning and Development Manager for Reinhold Toolhouse. If you wanted to join the conversation and join that live, the event page is live right now on my account. As well, in November, Tracy Spanenberg is back, and we're going to be talking about the last year in her life of a fractional CPO, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the highlights, what she's been doing, and what she's planning on doing. And then, of course, in December, we're going to get together again with all of our guests over the past 4 years, and we're going to have a spotlight on trends, like a 2-hour Christmas trend special. And that's coming in December. And so if you're interested in, if you know somebody that would like to be a guest or a sponsor of Progressive HR Live, we are starting our planning for 2025. Go ahead and DM me right now. And I also wanted to let you know that if you are looking for some inspiration on how to align people in business strategy, you can grab a copy of The Joy of HR on Amazon, #1 bestseller. Signed copies are available. Woo woo. And if you want to help in aligning people in business strategy, please reach out to Lotus, DM her through LinkedIn, or you can find her at talentremix.com. And with that, Lotus, do you have a story for us?
You know what? I opened the book and I just thought, I will not give too much away and I will read the foreword because I think Steve Brown, the amazing Steve Brown, actually tells a really great story that summarizes the book. So
Awesome.
I'll read his. Years ago, I was in a choir that toured during the summer between school years. I was a freshman in college at the time. The first church we performed at was kind enough to have a potluck dinner after the concert. My fellow choir members, who were now adults in age at least, went through the line to get a plate of the incredible display of food. And then they made sure to split up and sit at the various tables where other adults were seated. After I went through the line and got my plate, I spied a table that was low to the ground, surrounded by equally small chairs. The table was full of children who were giggling, playing with their food, and talking about whatever came to mind. I moved over towards them and pulled up a small chair and sat with them. The look on their faces was memorable. They were shocked that an adult would come and sit with them. Now, you need to know that I'm a very tall person at 6'4", so I looked especially strange trying to fit in this small chair around this small table. My knees were even with my shoulders, which made the kids howl with exuberance even more. It was an amazing dinner. I joined in instantly and laughed, made jokes, and listened intently to every story that was shared. I was enveloped in their world of joy. Afterwards, my fellow choir members called a meeting to discuss the behavior of its members. It was really meant to address me, and I knew it. I was chastised for not conforming and sitting with the adults who were kind enough to bring their food to share. How dare I sit with children? On top of that, to let the kids climb all over me and play with them was just unprofessional. When they had finished chiding me, I immediately responded, I'd rather be surrounded with joy than become an adult like any of you. The room was silent. At the next concert, others joined me at the kids' table while the majority fell in line into the less joyous world of adulthood. This story is reflective of today's workforce, and especially the profession of HR. We work in environments where conformity is valued far more than individuality. We support, create, and revel in systems meant to confine and control others because we've allowed HR to fall into this dark rut. Thankfully, Lotus Buckner is swimming against the tide with her book on the joy we can find in practicing HR.
Love that. Love that. Steve, go. Way to go. Awesome. Total Steve. Totally Steve.
It is. He's a great storyteller. You were probably wondering where I was going with that one.
Yeah. I was like, where is this going to go? Because I don't see any like organizational corporate thing with HR there. So yeah. Oh, thank you for joining us, Lotus.
Thank you
much
for
pleasure
having
to
me.
have you on. And audience, thank you for joining us today. We know that you are very, very busy. And so spending your time with Progressive HR Live is very much appreciated. We'll see everyone next time. Bye. Thanks, Resourceful Humans.